$4 billion, raised from millions of people around the world for a cryptocurrency that never had a blockchain. That is the story of OneCoin, and it is not a story about technology. It is a story about how a single human voice can convince an entire planet to hand over its savings for something that did not exist. Ruja Ignatova was born in Bulgaria in 1980. She earned a doctorate in law from the University of Constance in Germany. By any measure on paper, she was credentialed, articulate, and convincing. Those three qualities, it turned out, were the only raw material she needed. In 2014, she co-founded OneCoin Limited alongside Sebastian Greenwood, a Swedish national with a background in multi-level marketing. The company was headquartered in Sofia, Bulgaria, and it told the world it was building the next Bitcoin. She called herself the Crypto Queen. She gave speeches at packed arenas in Lisbon, in Macau, in London. She wore designer gowns and projected the specific kind of confidence that makes ordinary people feel privileged just to be in the same room. She said OneCoin would be bigger than Bitcoin. She said the early believers would be millionaires. She said the blockchain was real, the coins were mined, the ledger was live. None of it was true. Here is how the mechanism worked, explained as plainly as possible. A real cryptocurrency like Bitcoin runs on a public blockchain. That means every transaction is recorded on thousands of computers simultaneously, and anyone in the world can check the ledger. It is transparent by design. OneCoin claimed to have its own blockchain, its own mining operation, its own independent ledger. What it actually had was a SQL database. A SQL database is the same basic technology that runs a school attendance spreadsheet or a small business inventory system. The numbers inside it could be changed by whoever controlled the server. And whoever controlled the server was Ruja Ignatova. Investors were sold educational packages, ranging from a few €100 to tens of thousands. Each package came with tokens that could allegedly be used to mine OneCoins. The coins were assigned a value by the company itself. There was no open exchange where real market forces determined the price. OneCoin simply announced what a coin was worth, and the number always went up. This is the oldest financial illusion there is. A price that only one party controls will always look perfect until the moment it does not exist at all. The sales network was a classic multi-level structure. Existing members earned commissions by recruiting new members. The people at the bottom of the pyramid paid real money. The people near the top collected a portion of everything below them. In countries where financial literacy was limited and trust in banks was low, particularly in parts of Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe, the pitch landed with devastating effectiveness. Ordinary families liquidated savings. Farmers sold land. People borrowed against their homes. The promise was a new global currency for the people who had been shut out of the traditional financial system. It was a promise engineered specifically for the people who could least afford to lose. The first serious alarm came from outside regulators. In 2016, the Danish Financial Supervisory Authority flagged OneCoin as a suspected pyramid scheme. Bulgaria's own financial regulator issued a warning. The European Securities and Markets Authority published alerts. Germany's BaFin warned consumers. These warnings existed publicly, in multiple languages, and in multiple jurisdictions. The machine kept running. At peak momentum, OneCoin was allegedly processing tens of millions in member payments every month. In October 2017, Ruja Ignatova boarded a Ryanair flight from Sofia to Athens. She never appeared in public again. She was later indicted by a federal grand jury in the United States on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering conspiracy. As of the recording of this documentary, she remains a fugitive. In 2022, the FBI placed her on its 10 most wanted list, one of only a handful of women in the program's history. Interpol issued a red notice. Her current location is unknown. Sebastian Greenwood was arrested in Thailand in 2018 and extradited to the United States. In 2023, he pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering conspiracy in a Manhattan federal court. He faces decades in federal prison. Ruja's brother, Konstantin Ignatov, was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport in 2019. He subsequently cooperated with federal investigators and pleaded guilty. His testimony opened a window into the internal operations of the scheme, confirming what outside analysts had long suspected. The blockchain that OneCoin publicly displayed to investors was, by internal acknowledgement, not a real blockchain. An attorney named Mark Scott was convicted at trial in 2019 for his role in laundering approximately $400 million in OneCoin proceeds through a series of fake private equity funds. His conviction demonstrated that the scheme required a professional infrastructure of lawyers, bankers, and facilitators who allegedly knew, or should have known, exactly what they were moving. The recoveries have been partial at best. Some assets have been seized. Some funds have been frozen in various jurisdictions. But for the millions of individual investors who bought in at the bottom, the coins in their accounts are worth exactly what a number in an unverifiable database is always worth. Nothing. There is no mechanism to redeem them, no exchange that accepts them, no authority that recognizes their value. The money is gone. Total funds raised by OneCoin from approximately 2014 through 2016 are estimated by prosecutors and investigators at roughly $4 billion. That figure encompasses contributions from an estimated 3 million people in more than 175 countries. To put it in proportion, that is more money than the gross domestic product of several small nations, extracted from ordinary savers over a period of roughly 2 years, by an operation with no product, no technology, and no intention of delivering either. This is where the autopsy always leads, and it is always the same wound. The mechanism of the fraud was not the SQL database. The database was just the tool. The mechanism was the social architecture surrounding it. Testimonials from people who claimed to be getting rich. A hierarchy that rewarded early believers with real cash commissions funded by later believers. A charismatic figurehead with academic credentials and a designer wardrobe. A message calibrated precisely for people who felt excluded from wealth and were being offered, for the first time, a seat at the table. Financial frauds at scale do not survive on greed alone. They survive on hope. The investors who lost the most in OneCoin were not primarily the reckless or the lazy. Many of them were diligent. They attended the presentations. They read the materials. They asked questions and received confident, detailed answers from people who seemed to know more than they did. The scheme was engineered to pass casual scrutiny. The due diligence that would have exposed it required technical knowledge that most people do not have and had no particular reason to develop. That is the lesson the money autopsy leaves on the table every time it closes. Complexity that cannot be independently verified is not a feature of a sophisticated investment. It is a warning sign. If the only proof that something is working is the testimony of the people selling it, and if the underlying mechanism cannot be examined by a neutral third party, then what you hold is not an asset. It is a promise from a stranger. And in the economy of financial fraud, a stranger's promise, no matter how confidently delivered, is always worth exactly what it costs to make one.